It's all ephemeral, John.
That's right. I wish. Okay. Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are very pleased to have with us Stephen Valdinger. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you want to introduce yourself just briefly for us here?
Yeah, sure. I'm Stephen. I'm a senior support engineer at Chocolatey Software. Been doing PowerShell not very long, actually, compared to some of the folks that have been on here before. About 3 years is all I've been really in the weeds with it. But I got bit by the bug, and that was the end of it. I fell in love and started scripting and automating literally everything I could get my hands on, and landed a job at Chocolatey and fell in love with software automation from there. So that's where I'm at now, and I absolutely love it. It's a blast.
How'd you get started in IT?
I was the kid growing up that got in trouble for like taking apart the computer or tearing apart the CRT when it didn't work, or quote unquote fixing the VCR. So I've always been like into electronics and computers in general. And I've known since I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 that IT is kind of what I wanted to get into. So that's what I pursued in college and got a pretty early start. I actually, in my sophomore year of college, had the opportunity to apply for a help desk job at a local chemical company. And I ended up getting the position. So I got a really early start where I was actually full-time in IT sophomore year of college, and they helped finish paying tuition and all that stuff to finish school. And then from
beautiful.
there and then from there I did like some consulting gigs, some manufacturing stuff. I did a couple years in higher ed, and then I landed here at Chocolatey. So I've kind of seen a lot of things, been around a lot of different industries. So I've seen a lot of different challenges. So I think it's really helped me as I've progressed to kind of see, well, because I've been here, I know some things that have helped over here. So maybe they're applicable to being, wherever I was at the time. And it just kind of worked out really, really well. I've been pretty fortunate in my career, always moving up or finding the next challenge was never really a problem. And that's kind of surprising given the area of the world I live in. Small town Ohio with not a lot of super crazy, awesome IT opportunities. But really no desire to move to some big metro area, or, I'm not the kind of guy that would thrive well in a place like Seattle or Silicon Valley or Washington, D.C. or New York or any of those places. So it works out really, really well that everybody at Choco gets to work from home. We're 100% remote anyways. So it's been really great to be able to do that and get to spend more time. Now that I've got a little one, we get to spend a lot more time together while she's home during the summer, and even more right now since she was, home like 2 months of the end of the school year as well. So it's been really good with like the whole work-life balance thing that kind of became more important to me once I got married, and especially once I had kids. It was
Sure.
The whole work-life balance thing kind of bit me,
Yeah.
Priorities shifted a little bit.
Huge world changer.
Yeah, it was like, man, I'm going to go and like see how far I can get with my career. And now it's like I've got a little one, and it's like, yeah, the whole career thing I don't care about as much. I do okay. I'm comfortable. I love what I do. Get to spend a ton of time with my kid and my family and do cool things. So yeah, I'm in a really good spot. So
what technologies did you cut your teeth on in your early career? Were you doing server stuff or?
I was
Printers.
doing a lot
Printers.
of support. Yeah, a lot of printers.
BIOS upgrades?
Yeah, that was the very first job I had, the help desk job. It was a lot of, hey, this doesn't work, can you come fix it, sort of thing. But it was really interesting that the chemical company that I worked for, we were actually the first company in the county to do anything with virtualization back when Microsoft Virtual Server came out. So I kind of got buddy with the IT director there and kind of helped put that infrastructure in place, and got to learn a ton about just server infrastructure and networks in general and stuff like that. Because at the time I was still in school, I knew nothing about nothing. And then to be part of the team that really first in the county was doing virtualization stuff, it was really, really awesome. So I've been around that for a really long time. Both Hyper-V shops and VMware shops.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I was surprised a little surprised you were using the Microsoft stuff.
Yeah, I've used Hyper-V a lot more than VMware because honestly, budgets around here, a lot of the companies that I've worked for, their IT budgets really didn't support the licensing that takes to run a full-fledged VMware infrastructure. It's really expensive to go that route.
I think a lot of companies did VMware just because it was first.
Yeah.
I think originally with ESX and ESXi, right, John? I mean, that became like sort of the home lab or poor man's way to go about it a lot. And it was sort of that good barrier to entry initially that lifted that barrier and sort of got people in. But I do remember initially having to flash new versions of ESXi and losing all my configuration a lot. And I think it wasn't until Hyper-V matured a little bit and it was on a lot of platforms like Windows Server and Windows, just the desktop ones, versions, that I think more people started playing with hypervisors on their own desktops.
Right.
Yeah. And I know it can be said that VMware, at least early on, was leaps and bounds ahead of what you could do with Hyper-V in terms of their feature set. So I think that was a big driver for a lot of companies that were, looking to do more with their infrastructure. They had that kind of flexibility with VMware that Hyper-V just didn't have at the time. Things like vMotion and things like that.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
That Hyper-V's kind of caught up at this point. But I haven't played with VMware in a little while, so I'm not sure, exactly where they're at parity-wise. But the last big Hyper-V farm that I was managing, it was really good. It was patch management, things like that. The whole cluster-aware updating, things like that. It was a really solid platform, and it was forgettably reliable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I know that once they started really focusing on that for things like Azure, right?
Mm-hmm.
they needed the technology to build out what they were doing.
Yeah,
it got a lot better really fast.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think their move to go cloud kind of opened their eyes to what they were missing in the Hyper-V platform. So they were fast to fix it.
And, the scale it's a whole different game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's sort of cool now how you can go very much from local on-prem Hyper-V to cloud with Azure pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's really seamless. Yep.
So when did you start did you start with PowerShell? Was that your first kind of scripting language you used?
Yes, it was. Up until 3 years ago, the only programming I did was if there was an open source piece of software that I was using that was built on PHP or something, to change the way it looked or felt, or make minor configuration things. A ton of Googling to figure out what files I needed to edit, go in, make my edits, see if I broke it, fix it if I broke it. That sort of stuff. I never really wrote any code at all. I'm completely self-taught when it comes to PowerShell and programming in general. And yeah, PowerShell 3 years ago, that's really my first foray into any kind of hardcore programming. you could say.
So did you just reach a point where you decided I'm going to learn PowerShell, or is it just something that you started using in your daily work and it just kind of grew organically?
It was more of I started to manage an Exchange server. So you know how Exchange, whenever you did something in Exchange, it would show you the PowerShell code that it ran underneath the covers.
Okay.
And I was like, man, that's really cool. I wonder what that's like to just do it with PowerShell instead. So I started just messing around with Exchange that way instead of looking up information or adding a mailbox in the GUI tools that they had in the management console. I would just do it with PowerShell instead. And from there, it was like, well, I wonder what else I can do with this PowerShell thing. And it was version 4, I think, when I started. So I had a ton of stuff that was available to me already, since it was already V4. So it was really feature rich at that point. So I kind of took it and ran with it and see what else I could do, because I was a 2-man IT shop for a pretty big company. There was a couple hundred employees, so we were pretty busy day in and day out, trying to keep the lights on. So we went ahead and tried to automate as much as we could. So I started to, the onboarding process when a new user came on. Let's create their home directories. Let's create their mailbox. Let's do all this stuff by just running a script instead of touching all these systems separately to do this stuff. So it ended up working out really well. And then from there, I just kind of built on it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how quickly you get from that initial taste of it to sort of like trying to do more and more with it, right? I think, yeah. So it's interesting here, like Stevie, I will interject here. By the way, Adil Lagari over here, poor man's Hal, but hanging out with John here on PowerScripting. But I just wanted to sort of interject a few times for Stevie's story specifically, because I'm intimately aware of it. So specifically, like, when did you start showing up in the PowerShell chat in Slack and Discord, Stevie?
2.5 years ago, maybe 2 years. Yeah, it would have been about 2 years ago. Yeah.
So was it initially just you asking questions and stuff, or was it you actually helping answer stuff? Because you were.
It was a ton of questions. It was a ton of questions at first, for sure. I mean, there was some stuff that I was aware of, that questions came in that I was like, oh, hey, I know the answer to that. So I would throw in. But yeah, at first I was that guy that was like, hey, how do I do this? Can anybody point me to a reference to this or whatever? But it's amazing how quickly, when you hang out, even if it's online, with a like-minded group of people that we all have the same goal of helping to see you win. It's amazing how much more into it you get, and like how quickly you grasp concepts when you're around your peers like that. I know if it was just me on my own Googling around for the answers or whatever, it would be a completely different ballgame. There's that aspect of, man, I can't find the answer to this. Why is this so hard when you're doing it on your own? But when you ask it in a public forum, like even the PowerShell subreddit or Twitter or in the Discord Slack channels for PowerShell, it's like those guys are in it, man. They want to help you get there, and they want to help you get there in the best way possible. And that, this is one way to do it, but here's another way to do it that might be faster or better or whatever, and here's why. So not only do you get the answer to your question, you also get a ton of background and ancillary information to that really upskills you in a hurry.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's funny, when I showed up about 2 years ago, I'd say, was when I very much saw you as one of the guys who was helping everybody else. So it's funny to hear your story just a year earlier, being like the guy who also showed up, just being like, hey, how do you do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't tell you. I'm a very tactile learner. Like, I can't read something from a book and know it. I have to do it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And once I do it, it kind of sticks and I remember it. So it's kind of helpful that I am that way, because once I get a concept, I understand it enough to run with it and kind of do more with it and bend it and fold it and figure out what else I can do with that concept as well.
Yeah, I had an instructor one time that said learning is in the hands. Mm-hmm. And I've certainly found that to be the case.
I would very much agree with that.
I've studied Go a few times, watched videos and things and went through the exercises, but I never had a project that required it. So it's, as soon as I'm not doing it, it's just, I kind of understand what it can do. I understand some of the strengths, but it's, I haven't gotten a lot of value out of the time I spent watching those Pluralsight classes and things.
Yeah,
well, you'd be surprised how quickly it comes back to, though, John. I think a part of that is having a problem to solve, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to like use Go or any language, insert language here, and use that for an extended period of time. It's another thing to say, oh, here's this thing that's got a problem. It's written in this. I need to fix it. And that's the last time I'm going to touch it for a while.
Yeah.
So, and I definitely consider PowerShell to be one of those gateway drugs.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because I find myself, I've started to write C# now. And because of the way PowerShell is written and it's built on .NET, that really, really makes the transition to another .NET language like C# really easy, or easier. I won't call it really easy. Nothing is easy. But it lowers the barrier of entry to get to a language like that. And then any other, once you get over that hurdle that it's PowerShell's .NET, C# .NET, and then you take another step back and you're like, well, this is all object-oriented. It's all based on objects. That really unlocks the door to other object-oriented programming languages as well. And you start to do things like look at TypeScript or JavaScript. And it's like, those aren't that terrible either. I've done a little bit of stuff with our Chocolatey extension for VS Code, which is written in TypeScript for obvious reasons, and find that language to be not that bad either.
Okay. Have you done any Python stuff?
I've done a little bit of Python, only enough to like get something to work. A buddy of mine runs a sign shop and asked me to help him with a project where he was making a sculpture, and he wanted some like LED lights and some fog machines and stuff to come on, and like he wanted to control it with his phone.
Oh, so, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so I wrote like just a really rough, here's a really simple HTML web page with a couple of buttons on it. And when you click the buttons, it invoked some Python script on the back end that was running on a Raspberry Pi. And the Python script turned on the GPIO pins to like fire the LED lights on or turn the fog machine on or off.
Very nice.
Yeah. So I've done that with Python, and that's been it. I haven't really had a need to do Python for anything else, so I haven't played with it. But if the need arises that there's something that needs to be done in Python, I'm going to take a stab at it.
Somebody has a problem that needs solving, right? This is what we're talking about in the chat over here.
I'm always up for a challenge. No, I haven't.
So it's funny because people are saying like that you have that mentality of like drilling into a problem, and I'm pretty much like, this is generally what we do at Chocolatey is we point Stevie at a problem and we just let him go on it. We just sort of say, hey, this would be cool, right? And you just leave him at it, and the next day, like he's been working all night, he'll wake up and be like, oh, check out what I made.
Oh, I got it. Let's stick Stevie on it.
Exactly. That's pretty much the way it goes. Yeah. Yeah, it's really fun, and it's really cool the tooling that's available in the PowerShell ecosystem as well makes even that proof of concept stuff really, really approachable and really accessible to people. You look at, you want some kind of a web app or something like that to do something, and you look around and there's Adam Driscoll, who's got a universal dashboard that makes it trivial for somebody who's not well versed in web programming, but is really good at PowerShell. All of a sudden, in just a little bit of time, you've got something that's really, really great. And you wrote PowerShell code to make this web app happen. So things like that are just amazing. And there's tons of examples of that in the PowerShell ecosystem. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I know you've looked at PowerShell Universal there, Stevie. That's really exciting to be able to not only build the dashboards, but now like have any little piece of automation scripted in that way on a dashboard. That's neat on a web console.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam's doing some great stuff.
I wish I knew how to teach or inspire that mindset, because it's such a powerful mindset to have, but it's not super common.
Yeah.
Even in our industry, from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And it's kind of disheartening at times, it's like, dude, there's so much potential out there, and there's so many tools that can do so many cool things if you just take the time to figure it out and ask questions and play with things. I mean, there's no harm in failing, because from failure comes great results, typically.
Oh, yeah.
And a ton of stuff has been born from failure. I mean, how many of us drink Coca-Cola on a regular basis? That was a lab accident. And now look at it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Same with penicillin, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some of mankind's greatest inventions have come from an oopsie. So don't be afraid to fail. It's one of those things that with the right mindset, you grow from it and you become better from it.
And I know that there are people that have the mindset that, they just do their job and they go home, and maybe they're not super passionate about technology. It's just a way to pay the bills, and their passion is something else. And that's fine. I understand that. But people who, it's hard to put into words, but it's kind of like people who are in IT, but it's almost like they have a barrier between them and change. They kind of fight against it. They're a little resistant to learn new things or to try new things. And, that's detrimental in most cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people probably have felt that more so in the past couple of years with the rise of cloud and SaaS-based offerings and things like that. I mean, there's been a fundamental shift in the way the world works in terms of IT, where we don't have hundreds upon thousands of servers that are sitting on-prem in racks that we own anymore. We have a connection to a cloud that somebody else owns. It's somebody else's problem that keep the lights on for it.
Right.
And they're just consuming it. And I think that shift from a CapEx mentality to an OpEx kind of mentality kind of broke some people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It really, really caused some culture shock in some companies. I mean, I can't speak to anybody that I know personally that was affected in that way by it. But just knowing the industry the way I do, and knowing how some people in the industry are, for reasons that you've brought up, you're exactly right. I would have to think that this cloud shift has been a big thing in that regard.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's even sort of a fear of cloud I see in some organizations, previous organizations that I may have been involved with myself, to speak. But also, it's just sort of like people have this hesitation towards the change or the new thing, right? John, like you're talking about. But specifically, like further the teaching point too that you mentioned earlier, John, I find like I have a very similar definition to it, but mine is a little bit different. They're the type of guys who look for a problem to solve with a tool like PowerShell or Python, or C#. And then there's the other guys who create problems for themselves just to have the learning. Right? Stevie's definitely one of the latter, for sure. That's the interesting part, is the people who get really engaged like that are the same people who, like Don Jones has stated many times, like, your job is your employer's responsibility, but your career is your own responsibility. The people who are taking charge with their career that way and sort of like adopting cloud methodologies, DevOps, automation, all these principles, as philosophies more so than just like little bits of information to consume. Those are the guys who are going to really level up in their career.
And I know too, there's resistance to moving to the cloud in some companies, and there's also inertia. Because if I already have 3 data centers and I've got thousands of servers that are racked running my applications, well, there may not be a lot of benefit to taking those existing applications and workloads and migrating them. But as new things come on, I think people start, at least in our organization, I see a lot of the new stuff that's coming on. They're looking at, okay, do they have a SaaS offering? Is this something that can be hosted in the cloud? All the development that I've seen internally for years now has all been in containers. The types of containers has changed. The underlying technology has changed, and the way those containers are managed has changed. But it's all been, you're running your app inside a container. There's no, I need to spin up a VM to run my app anymore. That's just gone from what I've seen.
Yeah, and the SaaS thing is definitely something that we're starting to hear more and more at Chocolatey as well, as we have folks reaching out to us as well. Can you guys host it for us? Do you guys have a SaaS offering where we can just have a login and you manage all the infrastructure for us on the back end? It's
the whole build it versus buy it thing, right? Like people want to, more and more people are moving towards we don't necessarily want to build it anymore. We want to just buy an off the shelf thing that can do most of what we need and customize the little bits we need to.
Yeah.
So I do want to pause for a second and not assume that everybody knows about Chocolatey. We have had Rob Reynolds on a few times over the years, but I'm sure that we have listeners who may not be familiar with Chocolatey, even though there's, you have a lot of involvement within the PowerShell community. So could one or both of you kind of explain Chocolatey and how it's being used, why it has anything to do with PowerShell, those types of things?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. You want me to take this, Ado? I'll take it.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. So Chocolatey is a software management automation framework. So similar to, and it's been this way on Linux for years, where you've got yum and apt, where you can yum install or apt-get install a piece of software. Chocolatey fills that gap in the Windows world, where you can say Choco install Google Chrome or Choco install Firefox. And it's all built on PowerShell, wrapped up in a NuGet package. So we're using NuGet, which is a on-the-box package manager for Windows, but we're wrapping PowerShell scripts and binaries inside of a NuGet package, and then the choco.exe binary is the application, the utility that performs the work of whatever that package does. And a package can do anything because it's built on PowerShell. So it doesn't have to install Google Chrome or Firefox. It could contain a standalone executable that doesn't necessarily end up in programs and features. So you could have just the standalone version of Putty, put it in a Choco package, and then now you're capable to deploy that package to any version of Windows running anywhere, whether that be on-prem or in the cloud. So that's really what Chocolatey is, and the power of it is that you no longer have to click next, finish, or figure out what silent install arguments are or any of that stuff. The community repository is there. It's got around 8,000 packages already built on it. And you can just go out there, chocolatey.org/packages, search the community repository, with the new facelift, we have the command to install that application is right there. You can just click the little copy button, paste it into your PowerShell window, and you're off to the races.
So that is kind of the consumer side. What kind of relationship do you have with to businesses? And
so on the business side of things, we add a lot more features that make things a lot easier for you as an admin.
Okay.
Things like package builder, package internalizer. Package builder allows you to take that MSI or that exe, right click on it and say create Chocolatey package. And if it's a small MSI or executable, we like to say in as little as 5 seconds, you get a completely offline, ready to go Chocolatey package. We figure out the silent installation arguments for you. We write all the PowerShell for you. We bundle it up into what we lovingly call a nupkeg, or at least what I and the Scottish guys lovingly call a nupkeg.
New package, NUP.
And then you're done. You have an artifact that you can store in a NuGet repository of your choosing, and then deploy that out using whatever tool you want. So we can integrate with any RMM tool that can run PowerShell. All of the major configuration management players like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, SaltStack, SCCM, things like PDE deploy, BigFix. All of those tools can then be leveraged, or even Intune can be leveraged to deploy those applications. So you're creating that artifact once, you're figuring out what that installer is once to create that package, and then you can consume it anywhere you have Windows. So if you're doing stuff in CI/CD, you can create Chocolatey packages that you can put into a CI/CD pipeline. You can bolt Chocolatey stuff to your imaging process. You can, with our Chocolatey GUI and self-service feature, you can take away people's admin rights and give them a GUI interface to select the applications they want to install and then install them. There's all kinds of really cool stuff that you can do on the business side. And then the newest thing we've started doing is central management, which is in its current iteration, a reporting platform where you have a single interface where all of your machines check into via an agent that is installed on the machines. And they report into your central management server, and you're able to see what packages are installed on that machine, what versions they are, and if there's any outdated, that information bubbles up to the top of the list for every computer. And in the next version of central management that's coming out in right around a week or so, I'm not 100% sure exactly on the date just yet, but if Rob's still hanging around, yeah, the 23rd, there's a webinar, but deployments is coming to central management. And deployments we're super excited about it. The deployments feature is going to be great. Not only can you leverage deployments to do those Choco install, upgrade, and uninstall things that you can do today from the command line, but there's an advanced tab as well that allows you to write your own custom PowerShell scripts. If it's PowerShell, it can go in that advanced side, and that gets shipped off to the agent, and the agent executes that PowerShell code.
Okay.
So your deployments can be really, really advanced or really, really simple.
Yeah, they're like task steps essentially. But I do have to call out one thing in the chat here. Looks like Rob Reynolds has just dropped a huge Easter egg in the
chat. He's saying it comes out tomorrow.
Yeah, you guys heard that here first. I haven't even heard that yet.
Yeah. He's been hard at work with the release bits, so
yeah, so that'll be really crazy when that comes out. But that web dashboard, we've been working on that for a year or so, a little bit longer, John. Yeah. And that's been the big one here, is that central management is going to be that one spot where you're going to be able to manage all your endpoints, going forward. Not only like deploy packages and updates to them, build more orchestrated task steps through there. Hopefully, eventually have more groups, and integration with AD and other things like that. So some more advanced features coming soon for sure. It's that
There's a ton of plans for the central management platform. Things like a plugins API that allows you to develop plugins that do specific things that you can just bolt onto CCM. Things like that.
What kind of things?
It's going to be really great. things like Windows Update is a big one that's on the roadmap to figure out.
And if I have this, when this management tool is available, let's say that I have, a fleet of XYZ machines, whatever they are, and if I want to bring them under management, can I deploy the agent from console initially, or do I have to do a Choco install on the agent or on the machines to get the agent to then have it check into the management tool?
So currently, yes, you would have to use something that's not central management to deploy it out. So something like SCCM, Puppet, Chef, Ansible,
right?
PowerShell remoting, whatever can run PowerShell. You would execute a PowerShell script that says install Chocolatey, put a license on it, install the agent. Here's the configuration for the agent that lets it check into CCM. Do all of that. And then in a future version of CCM, we plan to add the ability to look for machines that don't have Chocolatey or onboard machines right from the dashboard itself.
Okay.
Yeah, discovery.
So you can, so you can bring machines in.
And then
when I do demo it sometimes, sorry, John, specifically, the simplest form I find sometimes is just literally running a PowerShell script on the endpoints to get them lit up and checking it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then if I use the capability from the central management tool I use the advanced tab, I want to run PowerShell code on my agents. It runs in the system context because of the way the agent's installed, or
runs the agent context. Yeah, it'll run as whatever the agent's configured to run as.
So currently. The agent could be running a system, or it could be running as a service account, or how?
Yeah, so by default, the agent installs. We create a Chocolatey local admin, local user, and throw it in the administrators group. So the agent's running as that user.
Oh, so it's not running a system; it's running as somebody in a user in the administrator group.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you do have the ability when you deploy the agent to specify in your own domain account. If you've got a domain managed service account that you want to run that service as, you can absolutely provide that username and password to the agent installation, and we'll set the service to run as that account instead.
Okay.
That tends to work a little better when you're accessing resources like network resources like file shares and things like that.
Okay.
And that will be especially true when it comes to running more advanced PowerShell scripts that might reach out to file shares or things like that, or touch other aspects of your network to perform whatever task it is that your deployment is doing.
Right. If you're double hopping or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that running as Chocolatey local admin is not going to work. You're just going to have to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think anybody who's done any sort of management of that type has run into that issue.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everybody has run into the double hop thing at one point or another and been like, why is this? Oh.
I understand how Chocolatey works with Ansible because I've used it. And I really like the Ansible support for Chocolatey. It's really good. And it's super easy to use.
That was actually one of the reasons I was brought on. It was because of my experience with Ansible a little bit more so. And so we work with a lot of configuration managers like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and SaltStack, as well as DSC. But I think I've always sort of appreciated, and I'm a little biased, I guess, our tight integration with Ansible, because those 5 or so Win Chocolatey modules are super well written. And we worked in partnership with the Ansible team. We work closely with those guys, and they're great. A lot of them are PowerShell dudes, and they'd show up in the PowerShell chat, like Jordan Boreen, all the time. And those guys have been really instrumental in helping us get up on the the configuration management stage with Ansible, because they're really they're very available. They're always willing to collaborate with us, and they're always willing to improve and submit issues and make improvements and PRs to their project. And I've always been impressed with how Ansible's developed in that way. In fact, when we were at Ansible Fest last year, I was surprised by the amount of people that showed up to our booth it blew us away. Me, Rob, and Mukesh were swamped the whole time we were there. So fun to see.
Now, how does Ansible work with SCCM? That's a capability I just found out a couple of months ago. I think that capability existed. And like normally, right, SCCM, I have a package that I put together. I create the application in SCCM. I deploy it, I copy it out to distribution points. I create a deployment, deploy it down to the machines, and it literally is copying the files down there from a central repository and executing it, which is not the way that Chocolatey normally works. So if I'm deploying a Chocolatey package, is it kind of like a script that I deploy that then executes the Chocolatey command that goes and does the installation, or is it something completely different than that?
In terms of SCCM, yes, that's exactly how it works.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be a script that you deploy with SCCM, and that would get deployed to the client, and the client would execute the PowerShell code.
So is that something that Chocolatey provides, like a generic, hey, this is a script you use with SCCM, and this is how you do it? Or have people just figured out how to use it with SCCM?
So I think I get this question a lot because I'm on demos and I get paid to talk about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will take this one because and Stevie's probably tired of it by now. The specifically around configuration managers, there's two approaches to integration, right, John? So specifically around stuff like Puppet, Chef, and Ansible, and DSC and SaltStack, you have this declarative context, right? You're stating out the configuration you want, whether it's the Chocolatey configuration, what packages you want installed, what features you want to turn on with Chocolatey. You can do that declaratively in the domain-specific language of that tool in a provider-based context, right? So with a Puppet or a Chef or an Ansible, you just declare out that stuff in the YAML playbook or the Puppet manifest, and it'll do it. It'll go ahead and make it so. The relationship is a little bit different with script-based integration. So script-based integration is RMM tools like Avanti, Shav, like SolarWinds stuff and Central, SCCM, Intune, and a lot of these other the script-based integration tools that we have with Choco, which is more about writing out the PowerShell code. So we find folks who are a little bit more experienced with PowerShell generally write out the scripts to do that. And we have examples on our website. If you actually go to the tab, we have organizational tabs where you can pick different configuration managers, and it'll actually show you how to write each thing in a playbook or a manifest or in a PowerShell script.
Oh, okay, that's very nice.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yep.
And then too, like if you are one of the things that can be an issue with SCCM is over time you've essentially have an enormous amount of content that you're replicating to your distribution points, and that content is supposedly managed by SCCM, but I have talked to SCCM engineers that say that the way that works is not perfect, and sometimes that they have cleanup that they have to do to remove old packages and things like that. But if I'm just using SCCM to manage the Chocolatey install, then all that stuff goes away, right? I don't have to care about storing those files. I don't have to care about keeping them up to date. I can, or if I do, right, I'm using an internal Chocolatey repository maybe, and because I want to control what bits I'm deploying to my machines because I'm that kind of shop, and that makes sense too, right? Then I could see that where that could be a problem, because if you have a central Chocolatey repository and you have a bunch of satellite offices that you don't want installing stuff across the WAN, and that's one of the things that's nice about SCCM is you can have a distribution point on site that everybody will go to do their installations.
So to that end, there's also the equivalent, right? Like we see a lot of shops that we integrate with all the tools, of course, right? We're agnostic as much as possible. So we have a lot of shops that come on and do SCCM work with us, right? And want us to integrate well with SCCM. And we do. But what we do find is over time that those shops kind of move away from the idea of distribution points, because distribution points being essentially like UNC shares, right? They're paths. They're like, well, they're just like CIFS, Jamba shares that are up there, and they grow and they scale. Like you said, they don't always scale as well because they get kind of heavy. So we do find that the alternative to that often is using a dedicated repository manager tool like a JFrog Artifactory, a Sonatype Nexus, or a Nito ProGet. All three of those tools have like high availability redundancy features and geolocation features, which will they do that one thing of repository management and they do that really well.
Okay.
And they can host multiple types of repositories, not just NuGet feeds. You can have your Yum feeds up there. You can have Maven feeds. You can have Java stuff, everything up there. And it hosts it, and it also scales it well. And some of them have SaaS-based offerings as well. Like I know JFrog and Sonatype specifically both have Nexus and Artifactory as scalable offerings. So that we find with enterprise users, generally they scale up to that because that NuGet v2 feed has a versioning and a hierarchy built into it. And it's nice and clean. It keeps itself organized. It's super fast to index and search against and install against always. No, it scales well with what you have.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
awesome. If you want to stick with the SCCM route, you can absolutely use those SCCM distribution points as your source for your packages, if you so choose. There's a little bit of work and a little bit of thought that has to go into using Chocolatey with a UNC path, just because of file share permissions and the way Chocolatey permissions work. When you're not using the agent. If you're using the agent and you're running the agent as a domain user context, it gets a little easier to do the permissions. But when you set up the permissions on a share and you're not using the agent, you need to take into the account that the machine account for Chocolatey, wherever Chocolatey is being executed, needs to have the ability to read the contents of that share.
So I thought in the modern versions of SCCM that the way that the distribution point stored files was more like blob storage, and they had gotten away from UNC paths, which would make it very difficult to do that.
Yeah, they might.
I think you can turn it on,
they
for certain things.
Versions.
Okay,
I'm not super well versed in SCCM. I have a passing understanding of it, having only had to deal with it very, very minimally.
Okay.
At the university in a prior life. But I do know that it is theoretically possible to use a distribution point as your source of truth for your packages. If you want to get started, that do. Yeah, we have a ton of people that use distribution points for getting their packages.
Okay.
Yeah, we tend to try to push them early as we can to at least looking into a true repository manager like a Sonatype Nexus or an Artifactory, just because they are a true repository manager and they handle those NuGet packages very, very elegantly. And you get that version control and things like that. Things that you want to see that make it really easy to manage those things over time.
Yeah, and that said, also, I think they are making some advancement with, I know that last Ignite, especially coming under the whole MEM umbrella now, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, right? They are bringing Intune and Config Manager, as they're calling it, not SCCM anymore, into that same blanket. So I think they are doing some work with blob storage and a couple other things there to try and make that more process more seamless between Intune and SCCM.
Okay.
So I do know that they're making some advancements. So definitely something to keep your eye open on. I know Ben Reeder and out in the PowerShell community has a lot of cool stuff on Intune, so he's always pretty well versed in that stuff. But it'd be interesting to see, yeah. But we like Stevie said, we have plenty of folks who are SCCM shops, and they will use the distribution points because those are the most convenient things for them. And as long as they're able to push packages and to keep them up to date on them, it works for them, right? So
sure,
we
exactly.
Yeah.
We don't care what tool you use. We just want you to not have to install software the hard way anymore.
Right. So how hard is it to create a Chocolatey package if I have my own application or some third-party application that's not in the Chocolatey repository? Is it hard to create a package?
It's not difficult to create a package, no.
It's called a package, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called a package. It's not hard to create a package. It seems very hard to create a package. When you run Choc new and all of a sudden you have a to-do file and a new spec and an install file and an uninstall file and all this stuff get generated for you, it's like, okay, well, now what? But if you open all of those files individually, you'll see that our templating and our scaffolding for all that stuff is self-documenting. We have so many code comments inside of those PowerShell scripts that explain exactly what every section is doing and exactly what you need to do. And really, for an installer, the important bits are, am I downloading this binary from a URL? And what is that URL? If it's embedded in the package, where is it in terms of the tools directory of the package? Is it in the tools directory? Is it in a folder in the tools directory? Use PowerShell and split path and join path to figure out the path to the binary in terms of where it lives in the packaging, and put that inside of your package. Then that binary needs a checksum because we validate that what we're installing matches what we're expecting.
Okay, sure.
And then that's a hash table that gets passed to one of two PowerShell functions, either install Chocolatey package if you're going out to the internet to download a URL, or install Chocolatey install package if you're not going out to the internet to install that application. And then you'll need to also know, like, obviously the silent installation parameters for that application, and put those in the hash table as well. So really, there's only a couple of pieces of information in the install script that you need to know and fill in. And I would say 75-85% of the time, you can delete the Chocolatey uninstall.ps1 script, because the auto uninstaller is going to figure that out for you by taking a registry snapshot.
Oh, okay.
So we're able to figure out how to uninstall it if we've installed it.
And I'm going to just plant the seed here for folks on the podcast, especially listening to the audio, that Stevie's done this talk on open source building Chocolatey packages at pretty much every PowerShell user group ever. So go and find one of the videos of Stephen Valdinger online. We can point you to a bunch of them. But he's done this talk a lot of times, and he actually goes through the whole process of building each piece of that package for you in open source, and showing you how all the bits work together.
Yeah, the very first package you do, it's going to seem a little overwhelming. But once you really get into it and read the comments around all the different sections and really understand that, oh, I just need to tell it a couple of pieces of information about the package that I'm trying to install, and then I'm done.
And this is like why we have that amazing community of maintainers. They get really good at this, and then they start maintaining their own packages on the community repositories. So you can very much do that
absolutely
as an open source user.
And then again, if you're a Chocolatey for Business pack customer, we've got the package builder feature, which allows you to just take that executable or MSI, right click it and said, hey, make me a package. And a couple of seconds later, we've made you a package.
The easy button, if you will.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That sounds a lot easier than creating an SCCM package.
Oh, for sure. The days of MSI packaging and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've been there. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So are there any differences with Windows PowerShell, like version 7.7, PowerShell version 7, 7.1, from a Chocolatey perspective, or does everything just work the way you would expect it to?
If you've got PowerShell 7 installed on Windows, it's basically just going to work. Now, to run Chocolatey native inside of PowerShell Core, PowerShell 7, or just PowerShell, that's not currently possible because we're built on the .NET framework, and we're built on a version of the .NET framework that lets us support all the way back to PowerShell v2. Thanks, Azure, for extending v2 support.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So, but we'd like to be able to, use Chocolatey anywhere, because there's still folks out there that have to support that old stuff. So we don't want to just leave them high and dry, but there is definitely the wish and the want to port Chocolatey completely over to .NET Core.
Okay.
And make that switch. But I don't think everything that we need, I don't think all of the pieces of the puzzle are there yet. I'm not sure if NuGet's there yet. I don't know if all the bits of .NET Core, I think they're all there at this point. But I'm definitely not the guy to ask that question. As far as how ready are things for us to even think about doing that work. And I know we don't have any plans to do that work in the immediate future.
Okay.
No.
That's kind of a down the road roadmap kind of item.
So what about the management tool? If I use the advanced tab and I have some code that I want to run on my agent, can I specify that runs under PowerShell or instead of Windows PowerShell, or how does that work?
So this is going to be interesting specifically, I think, because there's a point of clarification we need to make here. And I think that people often get confused with this a little bit. Early days of Chocolatey was more so purely PowerShell based on the PowerShell host itself. Like when you run PowerShell, you were running PowerShell 4 or 5.13, it was running within that context. Chocolatey now, it's more, compiled C#. It's running its own PowerShell host inside it. So it's actually like self-contained. So you can call it from PowerShell 7, you can call it from PowerShell 5.1, 4.3, and it will run. It has the the shims in there to be able to work, but it's not natively built on that inside the ecosystem of that PowerShell 7 or that PowerShell 5.1 or 4. It has its own PowerShell host. Am I getting that right, Stevie?
Basically, yeah. That's the long and short of it. I don't if you're writing code that is for PowerShell 7, like you're using something in the new web commandlets or some new feature of convert to JSON, say convert to JSON as hash table, for example, you throw that in a deployment step, that deployment step's going to fail.
Okay.
So in terms of that, as long as the stuff that's in 7 has a compatible path in Windows PowerShell, things will just work as long as they run appropriately. And it really depends. I mean, Chocolatey's for Windows, so when you run it against a Windows host, you're going to at least at the minute get PowerShell.exe as the default shell to launch that stuff. Now, if you've changed that perchance on a system where you've got a host that you've explicitly said, hey, the default shell is posh.exe, we should more or less just seamlessly work so long as the code you've written in the deployment step has a clear path to work in Windows PowerShell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I follow you.
Yeah.
So is there anything non-Chocolatey related that you wanted to touch on while we've got you here?
I think the one thing I want to bring up with Stevie is he didn't talk about his background that much, and that he's also a farmer. So he helps work on his parents' farm.
I do. I'm the most hillbilly IT guy you'll know.
He has cows. Yeah, they raise beef cows. So
that's
pretty cool. And also, I think, so this is one of the talks that Stevie's proposed before at user groups and other places, but I'd love to hear, which is the farm ops talk, where he talks about how his principles of what he's learned growing up on the farm are applied to a lot of his methodologies with tech and specifically PowerShell and coding. So maybe you could talk about that a bit, Stevie.
Yeah, I would love to turn that into a talk. I do have a farming background. I grew up on a very small dairy farm, hard times, milk prices. It was, one of those things, feed the cows or feed the kids kind of thing. That's just how life was growing up. So we didn't have the ability to, if something broke, call the repairman.
Right.
Plumbers weren't a thing. Electricians weren't a thing. I helped rewire my house at 11 because we had to do it ourselves.
Right.
That sort of thing. So at a very young age, I learned how if something was broke, I have to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing the break fix thing since I was a wee teeny tiny little guy, and watching my grandpa throw wrenches at the tractors and, trying to fix that stuff. And it wasn't always great. to do that stuff, because it was hard, I mean, especially when you're trying to figure out something, you don't know how this works. You're
Right.
not an expert. You have no idea, but you have to do it. You have to figure it out. So yeah, it was a lot of trial and error and poking things with a stick and getting shocked and zapped and soaked and everything else to keep the lights on and keep things going. But yeah, that's kind of how I learned.
So I bet because of that background, I bet you don't give up on a problem.
No. I
know
really
people. I know people in IT that they'll struggle with a problem for a while, and then they'll just like throw up their hands and, send it to another team, or basically, I give up. I bet you never do that.
No. Sometimes I wish I could, but I don't. I mean, there's definitely been instances of like support calls with customers and stuff that have gone for 3.5, 4 hours just because I've seen the pain and I thought it was going to be an easy fix.
Oh, sure.
And it turned it out that there was something environmental going on, or something that was causing this really trivial, should be stupid, simple thing not to work. And it just got under my skin, and I'm not going to hang up with you until we fix it. That's just, it's just how I am.
Not only that, but he'll like go off the call, and then he'll spend the evening building out an environment in his lab just like the customer, and he'll actually replicate the problem, and he won't stop. He just literally won't stop. It's crazy.
Done that a couple of times.
I understand that mentality.
Yeah.
I've got some of that.
Yeah, every once in a while, my wife gets frustrated with me because she'll be like, dude, your keyboard is loud and it's 2:00 in the morning and I can't sleep. Would you please just knock it on?
Yeah, my brother is actually an IT director at Purdue University. And
nice.
In his current role, he is working with a team that's applying technology to agriculture. So they're doing things like they have a lab where they are, they have plants coming through on a conveyor belt, and they're genotyping all the plants, and they're dealing with ways to increase efficiency and do tracking and IoT devices. How do you manage that on a farm situation? Have you ever listened to the Microsoft Research podcast?
I haven't, no.
So it's highly recommended. It's a very cool podcast. And one of the early episodes, I'd have to look it up. I'm sure you could find it. They have somebody on there, and usually the people on there are from Microsoft Research, and they're doing amazing things. But one of them, they were talking about agriculture technology and how do you build a mesh network that you can use to get data like soil data from across fields, right? How do you use drones to go get data from your fields? That type of stuff, which I found just fascinating.
Yeah, it's incredible where we've come with farming technology. It really is. You can nowadays the tractors and implements and stuff can literally run themselves.
Wow.
You map it, you map your field, you tell it where your row boundaries are, what's your seed density, what's your row spacing, how deep do you want the seeds to go. You program all of that into the monitor system, and you hit go, and you're in the seat just in case something breaks.
Wow.
Other than that, you're sitting there watching the machine do the work. It's absolutely incredible.
Wow, I had no idea that the technology was there for that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
absolutely.
They have like mission control centers now. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I've seen a few videos, and I have a friend of mine who actually flies down to South America sometimes to help do some networking for mines. And some of these mining corporations, their entire process of mining is automated. So all the machines out there are unmanned, and they have like a air traffic control sort of center, like a mission control, where they have everybody controlling stuff remotely. So they have zero accidents from their mining because they don't have any humans out there in the risk of danger. And they've automated a lot of that piece. Yeah.
That's amazing.
The technology stuff around that is really, really awesome. But for the farmer, at the same time, it can be incredibly frustrating as well. I know there's actually been a lot of legislation around it and a lot of court battles around this thing called right to repair.
Okay. I've heard a little bit about that.
Yeah, where like companies like John Deere, if you're using those satellite systems and that technology to run your operation, if something breaks, if you don't have John Deere's computer with John Deere's cabling and John Deere's diagnostic software, you can't fix the implement. So you have to call a serviceman to come out and look at it for however much they charge an hour, and then whatever John Deere is going to charge you, label or whatever company, insert company here.
Right.
John Deere's just, everybody knows who John Deere is. But you charge them to fix it, or they charge you to fix it, parts, all that stuff, where if you had the ability to go out and buy a laptop and buy their diagnostic software off of them and hook it up yourself and then just diagnose the problem, because the computer will tell you exactly where the problem is and exactly what part is broken. So you can go to the dealership, buy that part, and then just replace it yourself.
Okay. You
would save so much money.
Oh, yeah.
If you were able to do that. And margins are tight for farmers anyways, because you're talking a couple $1 million worth of equipment to make all that stuff go. So you have to really be in it to make that work, and to have that added expense on top of that makes that even more difficult to sustain. So that's where the farmer is coming from. But at the same time, that stuff is extremely complex in how it all works. And to have somebody that just goes out, buys a laptop, buys some software, and tries to fix it themselves, there's a huge potential for, well, now you've got 3 things broken, not 1.
Oh, sure.
So I see, as an IT guy, I see both sides of the coin, because I know how bad that could go. But
right.
I also, growing up being a farmer, I understand where the farmer is coming from, because stuff's hard, man.
Yeah.
Money don't grow on trees. It barely comes out of the ground for those guys. So I get it.
That's the big stuff with Tesla too, right? Like Ryan's saying in the chat. I mean, there's a lot of people who do repair Tesla stuff online on YouTube and stuff. I watch some of the channels, and it's like, right to repair is a huge issue. It's a huge issue going forward, because as our electronics get more complex, organizations are getting away with more and more closing stuff off and making it harder for an individual to try and repair their own electronics themselves.
Yep, absolutely.
So do you blog? What do you...
I like to think I do, but I very rarely have anything out there. I mean, it's been quite a while since I blogged anything, but okay. I do. StevieCoaster.dev is my blog. I've got links to my GitHub, where I have way too many repositories of abandonware. Okay. And then I've got my Twitter profile and stuff is all my contact info is out there on my blog, StevieCoaster.dev.
So do you have your online speaking events available on your blog, or where can people find when you've been on user groups and things like that?
Usually my Twitter is the best place to grab that. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know where I'm going to be speaking and when. I don't really have a dedicated place on my blog for when my upcoming events are going to be or anything. Okay. But that is actually a really good idea.
Yeah. You should
because I'm finding myself doing that more and more, because I did it once, and the same as writing PowerShell. I got bit by the bug to speak at places, because helping people learn is like something really, really, really near and dear to me. Like, I'd love to upskill other people.
Okay.
So the whole user group and speaking to people and helping grow their skill sets is something that's super awesome. So every chance I get, I try to do that. I know my next talk coming up is going to be the Denver PowerShell user group. I believe that one is July 6th is when I'm going to be doing that one.
Okay.
I'm not sure what time it is off the top of my head, but I do believe that's going to be available online as well.
And what are you going to be talking about?
It's going to be an overview of Chocolatey. So creating packages, like what a Chocolatey package is, the whole mindset around, well, why would I even do software this way? That's kind of an introductory talk to Chocolatey is what that's going to be.
Very cool.
Probably touch on the business side as well, just because I like to do that. Because life gets a little bit easier when you pay for it. Is it 6 p.m.? Thank you.
6 p.m. Mountain. 6 p.m. Mountain time on Monday.
6 p.m. Mountain. Yep. Yeah, that's me. And then after that, I think it's August 12th or August 19th or something like that. I'm going to be speaking at the Raleigh PowerShell user group, talking about Selenium web framework testing.
Cool. So I've got your blog link that'll be in the show notes and your Twitter ID that'll be in the show notes. Is there anything else that you want me to put in there?
No, that's everything. I mean, I use the same handle everywhere. So if
I'll put Chocolatey in there.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, you should probably put his GitHub repo in there too, because he works on a bunch of GitHub stuff. He kind of undersells himself a little bit, but he worked on that PS sysadmin toolkit with Mike Kanakos, and he's working on Vagranty right now as a module.
My Vagranty module is really cool. Yeah.
Okay.
That one's really cool because I hate running Vagrant up because it's annoying because you have to be right beside the Vagrant file to make that work. So I wrote Vagranty as a way to manage your Vagrant environments as a configuration. It stores it in a JSON file, so it doesn't matter where you are on the file system. You just run Vagrant up, give it the name, or start Vagrant environment, the name of the environment you want to start, and it just goes out and does the right things and starts the environment and puts you back in wherever you were on your shell.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, you can do that. You can manage plugins the same way. So you can search for, install, and uninstall Vagrant plugins. You can manage your environment so you can stop, destroy your environments with it. You can also back up or snapshot your environment with it as well.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So I'll put I've got your GitHub repo in the show notes too, so it'll be there.
Awesome.
So would Twitter be the best way if anybody wants to get in touch with you to talk about any of the things that you've talked about tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Just find me on Twitter at Stevie Coaster. You can @mention me. I think my DMs might be open. If not, shoot me a follow. I'll follow you back. And we can start a conversation that way.
So what about Slack or Discord?
If you're in the PowerShell Slack, I'm in there all the
Most
time.
evenings.
I'm probably going to leave here and go right to there.
Okay.
So, I'm all the time in there. If you ping me in there, I'll pretty instantaneously get back to you. I'm pretty on it when it comes to that.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
So because you have so many Legos behind you, do you want to hear, have you ever heard my Lego story?
No, but I would love to hear your Lego story.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Did you ever play or hear about Lego Universe?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My son was about 9 when Lego Universe came out. And at that point, I was already podcasting. And he decided that he wanted to do a podcast about Lego Universe. So he started doing that. And eventually he had like a co-host, somebody he had met in the game. And one day on Skype, well, actually before that, the guy who was like the community director from Lego sent him an in-game message saying that he'd found out about the podcast and that the people on the development team were listening to it and stuff. And Morgan, my son, set up an interview with him. So we interviewed him on the podcast. And a few months after that, he hits me up on Skype and he's like, do you think your son would want to fly out to Colorado and meet the Lego team? Hang out come to Playwell Studios and actually do interviews live. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. So they flew me and my son out to Colorado, and we spent a couple days there at Playwell Studio, and we got to play test parts of the game that hadn't been released yet. Wow. And we got to we actually got to play test parts of the game that were never released, because unfortunately about 5 months after we were there, they killed Lego Universe.
Yeah.
But it was such a cool experience because there was awesome artwork everywhere in there, just hanging up all over the place. And my son has some of the artwork from there. And everything in Lego Universe was based on actual bricks. So they had access to literally every Lego brick that had ever been made. And they were all on shelves, just that they could go and physically touch. And there was Lego stuff that was physically built just all over the studio, where they were building stuff that they were going to render and put in the game. And they basically just turned him loose with a couple of plastic bags of like, go get whatever you want.
That's amazing.
Oh, no,
and they gave him several Lego kits, Mindstorm and 3 or 4 other ones. I mean, it was such a cool thing that they did for him.
That's awesome.
And he did interviews, which they're still up on YouTube. They videoed them and we released them. And so he was interviewing the developers, and
that's wild. That's so awesome.
It was so cool.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah, so I have much love for the Lego company for that.
I love Lego so much. Dylan knows my love for Legos.
He's got a problem. Yeah, it's funny. You can tell he's enjoying your story right now, but literally, there's a part of Stevie inside that's super jealous.
Oh, you have no idea.
Whenever we go somewhere for a talk or a conference, whether or not a workshop together, I generally know there are 2 things that are true about Stevie. One is you have to always keep him well stocked in sweet tea. And the second thing is you can't let him too close to a Lego store because he will not leave.
Yeah, it's bad. The last time we were in Bellevue, I was like, Adele, there's a Lego store here. Keep me out. We're not going.
Yeah, we're not allowed.
My wife is not here and I have no self-control. I will get divorced if I go to this Lego store.
I will go in there and I will spend $600.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's this Lego Technic, like giant excavator thing that it's Bluetooth and you can drive it around, and it's massive, and it's like $500 or something. I don't know. It's stupid expensive, but I want it, and I want it real bad.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, my son has he last weekend, I think, had one of his friends come over who was also my son is 19. No, he's 20 now, and one of his friends came over who was like 23, and they were upstairs in our living room sorting Legos because he has tons of Legos downstairs, and he was trying to. I think he was going to sort out all the Star Wars Legos and rebuild some of the sets or something. He's got this really cool snow speeder, like the big snow speeder one.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I think he has a Star Destroyer that some Legos he bought, and other Legos. We got a whole bunch of Legos from one of my friends at work that his son didn't want anymore. He just basically just brought me a couple tubs full of Lego. So we've got a bunch of that stuff.
Nice. Yeah, my daughter's got so many kits. She's into Lego Friends. And
oh yes.
Oh my gosh. I literally don't know how many Lego Friends kits she has because I can't tell her no. I'm bad dad.
You can never have too many Legos. It's just not a thing. Too many Lego.
She
I
loves
keep forgetting that Lego is plural.
She loves them, and she's like, she's 7, and she's doing the ones that are like ages 12 plus, and she does them with no problem. So I'm like, she's probably learning something from putting these together, some kind of tactile, like figuring it out, something. I'm like,
spatial reasoning.
Yeah, it's an educational experience. You can buy the Lego. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about solving problems, right, and keeping up problems longer. Like very much at an early age, you know, when they start playing with toys where you can keep going and you can keep building or you can keep interacting with it in different ways. That's an excellent skill to have, and that's a great like sort of resilience you can develop in yourself to be like, okay, this person, I'm not going to quit easily on this. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep building it.
Yeah, she's very much me and doesn't quit until it's fixed.
Okay.
Type thing, because she'll bring home the big kits that are like over 1,000 pieces, and she'll sit down at the dining room table. She'll open it all up, and she'll start. And we have to drag her to bed if it's getting close to bedtime. If she starts it early in the day, she'll have it finished by bedtime.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. And she doesn't get up. She doesn't get up to go to the bathroom. She doesn't get up to eat. She doesn't get up to drink. It's like, hey, I'm going to be here doing this Lego. So when it's supper time, just set my chicken nuggies right beside me because I'm going to be doing this. It's so funny, but she's in it, and I love it.
I wonder if that helps develop the ability to focus. I bet it does.
Probably, because she's like hyper focused on it. It's amazing. And she's only like that when she does Legos. Anywhere else, she's your crazy 7-year-old into everything all over the place. But when it comes to doing Legos, that's it. Sits down, opens the book, doesn't stop until she's done.
I think things like phones and social media are ruining our attention span.
I was going to say ruining us.
Yeah.
Well, I also think it's sort of abstracting away a lot of the tech and the underlying stuff, right? Like kids these days, I think more so, and I'm not trying to be the old guy who says, oh, kids these days, but seriously, like people are becoming more removed from their tech. More of it's being abstracted away. So you have an iPhone that a young teenager gets now. Back in the day when we had the original Android phones and stuff like that, and earlier phones that came out, if something messed up and you kind of tried to figure out how to fix it and stuff like that, now with a lot of kids, they'll just be like, oh, it doesn't work. I just need a new one.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, did you try it? Did you try resetting it? Did you do a factory reset? Did you try changing these settings? Did you try uninstalling some apps? No.
But it almost seems like to me that teaching your children to focus is like giving them a superpower.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so important, and it's such a difficult thing for a lot of children now to be able to just sit and focus on one thing until it's done.
Yep.
And I think
I agree.
I imagine that that doing Lego is probably a good way to cultivate that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more research in that area of brain development. You know, how can we, given the incredible variety of inputs that our children can be bombarded with continually, how do we teach them to focus?
Mm-hmm. You know where I've seen that bit actually is like in terms of something analogous to Lego in sort of online culture is Minecraft. So
that's what my daughter's hooked on is Minecraft. Yep. That's where she does her building.
Yeah. It also sort of forces you to solve problems and think about things and follow things through. There's definitely got to be some credit to that.
Yeah. Another cool thing that I've been doing with my daughter here the past couple of months is that Swift Playgrounds thing that Apple came out with.
Okay.
So I've got a Mac for work, so I threw Swift Playgrounds on here, and it makes programming like a game for kids, basically. And it's really cool where you've got a guy in a world, and you have to get him to his goal by dropping the methods or the functions in the right order to do the right things. So she's learning order of operations. This is what a function is, like turn left, turn right, move forward, move backwards, that sort of thing, and dropping them in the right order. And as you progress through it, things get harder and harder and introduce more concepts, things like loops or if else statements and things like that. And it's amazing to see her brain work when she does that. And she's honestly, she's really freaking good at it. I'm afraid she's a better programmer than I am. But
she almost certainly will be learning at that age. For sure.
And and it's amazing. She sits down on my lap and is like, "Daddy, I want to make my game." Okay. And she'll sit here with me for an hour in the evenings, and we'll just go through maps and figure it out. And sometimes it's, I have to help her sometimes, especially when it's a new concept being introduced. She doesn't quite get it. And then there's been times where it's like, I'm learning something at the same time because I don't freaking get it because I'm not a programmer.
Right. Have you seen Scratch?
I have. Yes. Okay. Scratch is really cool.
So how does Scratch compare to Swift Playground?
I haven't used Scratch, so I'm not sure. I've just seen it, like, I think on Twitter and a couple other places, so I know in passing what it is. But I've never used it enough to know. Yeah,
so for people who don't know, Scratch is an MIT project that basically
why did my audio
you create games using programming constructs that are kind of like drag and dropping Lego bricks onto a canvas, and creating if-else statements and loops and setting properties on objects and all that sort of thing is built into Scratch.
Now, can you remind me, is it its own language there, John, or is it Python based, or what is it?
It's a visual type of building block language. You're not like typing out code. You're dragging and dropping coding constructs onto a canvas to build it out.
Because I seem to recall that it might have been like, I think was it Raspberry Pis that it can run on as well?
No, there is a Microsoft, what is it called? Let me see if I can find it.
Oh yeah, Microsoft did come out with something for that, didn't they?
Yeah, they have, let's see, MakeCode.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, so what MakeCode does is they have projects that have for different physical devices that you can do. There's one called Adafruit and Q and Lego Mindstorms.
For those IoT type devices?
Yeah, exactly. And also Minecraft. So there are, there's MakeCode, there's different projects that you can do in Minecraft using coding to modify the Minecraft environment. Like one of the videos I watched, they made it rain chickens.
Wow.
And it looks like when I had first looked at this, there were only like maybe 6 videos, but it looks like there are a lot more out there now. I had thought that this project had kind of died, but it looks like somebody has picked it up again. And there's a lot more videos on here now, but that's minecraft.makecode.com.
Interesting.
Right on.
Yeah, I need to show that to my daughter again. And it looks like, oh wow, it looks like Scratch. This I'm looking at the banner here, and that the construct on that banner looks like Scratch. Interesting. Anyway,
Yeah,
neat stuff.
yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to keep you guys on forever. I just wanted to tell my Lego story.
No, well, that
all
was
good.
great. I think we kind of naturally dovetailed into all this talk of bringing kids into programming. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
The younger generation, that's going to be, it pays to inspire them for sure.
And even if it doesn't end up being a career, I think still the problem-solving mindset, the things that you learn when you learn how to program, I think are valuable skills in any field, any kind of endeavor any kind of career that you may end up having.
Oh, I
downstream.
agree 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Learning to program and programming in general tends to make you think in a more logical manner.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
You've got this and you need to get to here. What do you need to do to get there? Yeah.
And sure, I mean, Algebra 2 will do that as well. But
I'm no good at math.
But it's way more fun. It's way more fun to write code than it is to solve Algebra 2 equations or
Yep. I don't do
calculus.
math with letters in it.
Yeah, we homeschool, and my daughter is doing well. Normally during the year, we also she takes a class at a homeschool co-op, and the way that works is she's on campus one day a week, and they have classrooms and labs where they actually do experiments and dissections and chemistry and physics and all that stuff, and then the rest of the week they're at home doing assignments. And my daughter decided, my son is a junior at Georgia Tech. And he told my daughter, who is 14 and going into 9th grade, that what she really needed to do was make sure that she took calculus as dual enrollment in high school, because she did not want anything to do with, freshman calculus at Georgia Tech, which is where my daughter wants to go. So in order to do that, she figured out that she needs to take the second half of Algebra 1 during the summer. So I'm helping her through that process.
Oh, wow. So how far into it before you're lost too, John?
Well, I went to school for engineering. So I took math all the way up through differential equations.
You did a lot of math.
You've done multivariate stuff and everything.
Yeah, but I sure don't remember any of that. So what I usually do is whatever my daughter's working on, I've got to look at the book and figure out how to do it. And then I'm okay, yeah. And then I can help her through it. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how much help she continues to need through high school, because I could use a refresher. Yeah, so I'm the math and science buddy. Although she has never asked me for science help.
Wow.
I don't think. She has always done very well in her science classes.
Does she know what she wants to major in or anything? Or does she know what
she wants to be a structural engineer.
Oh, really?
There you go.
Okay. She does. Cool. And we have, do you know what the Great Courses is?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So they have a subscription called the Great Courses Plus, where you get access to a bunch of video courses, and they're done by, in a lot of cases, by college professors. Mm-hmm. And she has been watching, there's a series called Everyday Engineering, where they talk about, how plumbing works and how electricity works and how, how dishwashers work and how, just how bridges work, how dams work, that kind of thing. And she just ate that whole course up for lunch.
Is it similar to sort of like what the masterclass stuff does, but actually for practical course concepts?
Yes. So they have literal college and high school subjects as well. Like they have an Algebra 1 course, they have an Algebra 2 course, they have a differential equations course. They have language courses. They have
obviously taught by some of the best, right? Then I guess.
Yeah, they've got some quality instructors. History, philosophy. There's some art stuff. Travel stuff. There's a lot.
I don't know about you guys, but for me, very much like going through school anyway, like I found those instructors, those teachers that were really passionate about whatever they were talking about, it just automatically made you way more engaged in that subject.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
No question.
Yep.
We need to pay our teachers.
I'm trying to figure out how long we've been streaming.
A while.
It's been a while, right?
Yeah. It's been a while.
Are we close to hitting the 3-hour mark here?
No. We're almost at 2. We're like 110 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Well, I should probably go, but thank you both very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been fun. I've wanted to do this for a very long time.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching the podcast and it's like, man, that's such a cool platform. I would love to be on there someday. And now here I am. It's like,
it's kind of crazy.
It's crazy where life is taking me. You know, it's like I get to do all this cool stuff now. It's like, man, what is this? I'm not supposed to have these opportunities. This is nuts. So I'm very, very appreciative.
And thank you for coming on to co-host, Dill. That was incredible timing when you pinged me, because Hal had just, I don't know, just like the night before said, hey, I'm not going to be there this week because I've got to pick my daughter up from camp. I was
one
like,
of these days we got to do something with Hal. I want to actually be on this thing with Hal because I'm like always the replacement Hal. We miss you, Hal.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we're going to record in July because the week that we normally record, I'm going to be on vacation, hopefully enjoying a beach. That's the plan.
Yeah, I'm going on vacation in 4 weeks, the middle of July.
I'll
be gone. It's been booked for a while and then canceled, and then we called, and then they were able to get us in again. So it's all rebooked and all taken care of. So yeah, we're going to the Great Smoky Mountains.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we're going to spend a week down there. We love it down there. It's so much fun.
I'm going to Hilton Head Island in South Carolina.
Nice. Awesome. I've got family down there.
Yeah, we love that area.
Mm-hmm. They do too. They keep bugging me to come down and go fishing, and my schedule never lines up with when they're there. Because it's just a vacation home for them. They're only there a couple weeks of the year at a time. They kind of a lot of people do that. They split their time 50-50, but that's maybe 70-30, maybe 80-20, maybe 60-40. That just depends on the year, how often they're down there. But yeah. But yeah, they really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, we usually stay in Sea Pines, but this time we couldn't find anything in Sea Pines that would let us bring our dog. So we're going to be in Shipyard, which I've never stayed in Shipyard. That'd be interesting. Do something a little different. We haven't been there in like 5 years, so it's going to be good.
Yeah. I can't remember which area of... They're in the southern part of Hilton Head.
Yeah, so Hilton Head Island looks like a shoe.
Yeah.
And Sea Pines is like where the toe goes in the shoe, where your toes go.
Wow, right at the toe.
Yeah, that's where
gotcha.
That's where the Salty Dog Cafe is, and that's where the lighthouse is, and all that stuff.
Yeah, they would be towards that way then, because I know they've done that lighthouse and things.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you're not staying in Sea Pines, you can pay like, I don't know, $5 to get into that area and then go do the stuff there.
Yeah.
I wonder how busy it's going to be. I'm curious.
I wonder too.
Me too. I'm really curious to see how busy Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg is going to be.
Yeah, I'm personally not that worried about being on a beach because of the UV, the amount of air movement, that type of thing. It just seems like a low risk.
But probably with a lower frequency of people going to, you've also got probably more isolation than you're getting right now when you walk out the door.
Right, that's possible.
Yep.
Rock on. Well, you both enjoy your vacations. I'll just be sitting here getting work.
Hey, how many times have I told you to come to Ohio and then the world shut down and you missed your chance? So I don't want to hear it, bud.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You're just going to put me into work on the farm. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, well, the cows can't feed themselves.
Yeah, I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, which is very much
that's
surrounded by.
Yeah, there's farming country out there.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's some big farming country out there, actually.
One summer I bucked bales. That was that was very hard work.
Yeah, it's funny how that all shaped up. Like towards the end of me being in high school, like my sophomore, junior year of high school, we finally broke down and bought a large square baler, so we didn't have to do the little bales anymore. And it was all just equipment to put the hay away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we always heated our house with either coal or firewood growing up. And then as soon as me and my sister moved out, you bet your bottom dollar they put a oil furnace in so they didn't have to. Oh, I was so torn. I was like, really, guys?
As soon as they got you off the payroll, it was like
yeah, all them years at throwing coal and firewood, and as soon as the kids were gone, they went and did that. They did that, and they got central air a couple years later. I'm like, really, guys?
Wow.
Really?
That's funny.
Oh, good times.
All right. Well, good night, gentlemen. I will talk to you later.
Yeah.
All right.